Welcome for this fourth seminar on our combined data training. This time to present to you a tool we developed and of which I'm very proud because we did it and it works. Uh, which is a visualization tool for all development assistance of EU and member states. And I will be doing this presentation with Jérôme Leroy, whom you see in the among the participants, who is the team leader for institutional reporting in DEFCO, as indeed this project was carried out hand in hand between the policy and the data unit. So you will see that we will run you through a number of topics on the Explorer, the background, what is a dashboard more generally, what is the Explorer itself, and more details on how to use it. So first, why do we have an EU Explorer? Why did we put that at the disposal of everyone on the internet? This is a transparency effort. Transparency, as you well know, is one of the four effectiveness principles with ownership, focus on results, and partnership. It is closely linked to accountability. That's what I said in the introduction to our very first training last week. Transparency is not an aim in itself. It is meant to improve accountability and improve decision making. And it is in this spirit that we have developed the Aid Explorer as a way to put at the disposal of everyone, starting with our own colleagues and those of the member states, information on the assistance that we are collectively providing to our partner countries. I said starting with our own colleagues, but I should have said also starting with the officials of those partner countries who needs that information for their own policies. Transparency is also the area that bridges the two policy areas of effectiveness and financing for development. It is one of the effectiveness principles, but it is also the key to working on financing for development. You need to know the resources at hand if you want to work on them, increase them, or better direct them. So next slide, please. The background to it is there was already an EU Aid Explorer since 2010, but the technology started to be outdated and it was not so user-friendly, which is why we decided to upgrade it and start with a totally new design on new technology to have a more user-friendly Explorer, and that's what was launched in 2019. In 2020, in October 2020, so just 2 months ago, we issued a new version of the Explorer with enhanced functionalities, a different show of the information, in particular at project level. The project level in the 2019 Explorer was not too clear, so we produced now a much more precise and clearer project page. We also included a link to the SDGs to the extent that the data exists. And a more precise overview of country expenditures. The project, the Explorer is an inclusive project in the sense that it brings together the statistics and the policy, as I said, that was inbuilt in the design. It also brings together the OECD CRS and IATI, which we saw in our first two sessions, and it was conceived in close cooperation with the member states when it was devised with the colleagues in the member states who run comparable, even though smaller, tools. I should flag a practical element. It works best on Microsoft Edge, and it doesn't work on Firefox. So that is to know. It works perfectly on mobile devices, tablets, even phones where the screen is a bit too small to really understand, but it works. Next slide, please.
Next slide.
I hand the floor back to Jérôme to explain the dashboards.
Yeah, thank you, Laurent. This is going to be a two voice presentation, and after this PowerPoint, we'll go live into the EU Ed Explorer just to show you how it works. Technically speaking, the EU Ed Explorer is a dashboard, so that will ring a bell with many of you, as its dashboards have become quite fashionable in order to present data. So just to give you an idea why, Laurent has given you the sort of strategic environment, but I just want to give you a few additional details. We need to cover the needs for reports. We feel that they are increasing. People want to know more about figures, data, and frankly, we were running a little behind in that area. And we need to do it in a dynamic way. So we need to choose what we want to show. So that's the second point. We need to have the end user, rather than to pick up his mail or phone and say, do me a report. We want the end user to be able to build up their own reports. And that's quite important. It saves everybody time. We also insist on the fact that everyone must have the same data. Too many times we have seen different figures for the same things, the same project or the same financial flows, and that's a little bit of a concern. So we are using what we call the single source of truth concept, i.e. Data should come from one main database, even present in different ways, but there should be one central database to be there so that everyone uses the same figure. And obviously, if we want to do that, we need to have a user-friendly instruments. And also that makes our life easier, because the better presented the data are, the easier it is to make data quality checks. And the last, but probably the most important point, is that it has allowed us, and we hope it will allow you, to make substantial productivity gains in data presentation and the use of data. If you are not convinced, well, go back to Excel and a pivot table, and I'm sure that you will be convinced. Now, how do we do the dashboards? They use a technology called ClickSense. Some of them use an older technology called ClickView, but the sort of latest tool in the area is called ClickSense. It's commercially available, and you buy the technology and you buy licenses. The ClickSense is a visualization tool that uses databases. In the case of the EU Ed Explorer, you've got at least 5 different databases that are converged to make the presentation of the EU Ed Explorer. And obviously, the input or the encoding of the data is done by the reporters, in this case, the EU institution and EU member states. So there is one key element which I want to remind everyone. Dashboards are easy, are a very dynamic and easy way to parameter and visualize the data, but dashboards are not the data per se. The data come from databases, and the dashboards are only as good as the data they visualize. In other words, garbage in, garbage out. So if there are mistakes in the data which you visualize with the dashboards, then it's basically a data quality issue that should go up to the encoder. And if you see something wrong with the EU, we are very happy to receive the information and correct it. The same should be true for the EU member states whose data are presented in the dashboards. Data quality is paramount, and in a way, the EU Ed Explorer has contributed to data quality, because it shows very easily, very obviously, where the data is wrong or missing. And beforehand, that could be hidden because, to quote Laurent, in order to look at the OECD DAC development finance statistics, you needed a PhD in econometrics. That's a direct quotation from Laurent. But the point is that right now, you can do it in a much easier way. So therefore, anything wrong is much easy to look at. So a very quick presentation on the characteristics of the EU Explorer and the dashboards in general. So ease of use, we hope so. Adaptive ergonomy, i.e. You can be a basic user and use basic features, and then the more proficient you become, then you can use advanced features. Live data from databases. In other words, in the case of EU and Yati, whenever there is a correction made in the database, you get it in the EU Ed Explorer. Not the case for OECD data, though, which are frozen. You can combine your parameters. You can choose your parameter, and you can combine your dimension to have the kind of report you want. Drill down capability, meaning going from the general to the particular. So you can go from multi-country, multi-annual down to project. You can export the data in Excel, which is also very convenient if you want to do further work on the subject. It has a strong regulatory framework. In other words, it uses the OECD rules. It presents ODA. It's a technical and legal template and framework that is known and quite solid. And then last point, it's also adjusted for Brexit, in as much as of the relevant date, it will present EU 27 only. Now, I'm going to switch back to Laurent for the next steps of this presentation, exactly what the whole thing is about. Laurent, à toi.
Thank you. So back to the Explorer itself. As I said, it's conceived as a net transparency website. So the purpose is to inform the public about what we now call Team Europe, i.e. EU and member states, development and humanitarian assistance. It's focused on ODA flows. For the EU institutions, we're talking about the Commission and the EIB. And I should flag that even though I said it's meant to inform the wider public, you still need a certain level of knowledge of development finance to understand the data. It's easy to use, but the data behind it still is a complex matter. So the data sources for the Explorer are what we discussed in the previous trainings. First, the OECD data, i.e. the statistically rigorous data on ODA from the EU and the member states. And the Explorer really, you will see in the demonstration, presents all the statistical data since 27. That is the date that we chose as a starting point, but you have all the data, official data, statistics for EU and member states since 27 in the Explorer. Problem with the OECD statistics, that's the reporting timeline. So the latest data available today is 2018, because that's the latest data available for all. You will see 2019 data for the EU, because since the data comes from our own database, we can publish it earlier. The second data source is the IATI portal, where we and not all member states publish their information, and that really allows to drill into project level data that is very detailed and is updated regularly, normally monthly, by the publishers. You will see that because for the member states we could not connect their OECD data from their IATI data, you actually have to choose your entry point in the Explorer, whether you want to look at statistics or whether you want to look at project data, and then you choose either OECD or IATI data. For the EU institutions, since it's our own data, then you have the best of both worlds, because we can connect the OECD and IATI data. So for all projects, for EU institutions, you have access to statistical reliable data for the global level and up-to-date IATI data for the projects without having to switch from one data source to the other. We hope to be able to do this for the member states in the future, but that entails some improvement in encoding the data so that we could match member states' information on OECD projects and IATI projects. Sorry. Now, the added value of the Explorer is it's one-stop shop where you can see all the data in one place. User-friendly, we hope, with graphs, with easy to manipulate filters. Jérôme will demonstrate, and it is, to my knowledge, the biggest, by far, the biggest visualization tool, or the visualization tool with the biggest database behind that exists in the world, because the EU as a whole is the world's biggest donor. Some of our member states or their implementing organizations are publishing their own transparency portals, which are very useful resources, and we are thinking of making links between those portals and the Explorers in the next phase. But the specificity of the Explorer is it combines the data of all the EU institutions and member states. So it is useful, for instance, in this programming period. We're starting the programming period, which in this next period is meant to be joint programming between the EU and member states. And we know from experience that, sorry, the major difficulty in a joint programming exercise is actually to know what each of us is doing in country X or Y. That's what has taken most time in previous joint programming processes, that establish the landscape and see where there is room for cooperation, because we're several present. Well, with the Explorer, you now do this with a few clicks. And that, as Jérôme said, is a huge efficiency gain for our colleagues in the field. It is also hopefully a very useful analytical tool, and CSOs in particular use it a lot to do their watchdog work on ODA. We now have reached a kind of a cruising speed with more than 2,000 uses per month, visits per month in the Explorer, which shows, because it's still pretty specialized data, which shows that it really has become successful in the development community. So what can you find in the Explorer? Well, you have this fictitious example of the Democratic Republic of Gondwana, and you're asking yourself, how much did the EU pay in Gondwana? Where in the Explorer, you have everything the EU paid since 2007 until 2018. All EU and member states, you have that for the EU institutions. You have a breakdown by member state. It's ODA only, but all ODA. You can have a sectoral breakdown using the taxonomy of sectors. You can also break down by delivery channels, although I have to say that data quality issues are the biggest in this delivery channels field in the OECD reporting. So it's not the safest way in the Explorer. And you also have a full project list with a drill down possibility, so that you can drill into any project and have access to the detailed project data. Reverse question, how much ODA did a given member state pay to Gondwana? You have the same analytical possibilities zooming from a member state. If you want to visualize the projects done by the EU in Gondwana, you should go through the IAT data source, because that's where the project data is the most complete for those projects which are reported. But a large quantity of data is not reported by member states, so you would not have all projects in. The default access in the Explorer uses the OECD data, because default access is you first have access to the aggregate data, and that is the statistically reliable OECD data. And then if you want to drill down to project, you switch the data source to IATI. Unless you want to drill into an EU project, EU institutions, you don't have to switch. In short, the technical features of the Explorer, as Jérôme explained, it is not a database, it's a visualization tool or a dashboard, but what is behind is a huge database of more than 6 million entries, combining EU dashboard, internal database, OECD database, and IATI portal. You have simplified. Jérôme, can you move to next slide, please?
Yes, this one. Yep.
Yes. So all this available on the internet. The data that you have is on gross disbursements. That's an important precision to make. So it's not yet up to date with the latest rules on ODA that go for grant equivalents. We measure flows here and gross flows. And of course, if there are gaps in reporting, they show very clearly in the Explorer. And we have actually, since 2019, used the Explorer quite a lot to improve data quality, both from us and from the member states, as the defaults in reporting show so clearly. So we want to keep improving the tool, and what we have in mind is possibly the slide here says including TOSTI reporting. You heard, if you attended the seminar on Tuesday, that TOSTI has a much wider scope than ODA. So there's a lot of data that we will have with TOSTI on what the EU and member states spend for sustainable development that is not shown anywhere. So we do see the interest in a TOSTI Explorer. We still haven't decided whether we would include all TOSTI in the existing Explorer, or whether we should rather have a separate TOSTI EU Explorer. That we'll see when we reach it. More close to us, so more precise, we want to be able to visualize the civil society recipients of grants, which are not shown yet in the Explorer. We want to move to reporting ODA based on grant equivalent rather than gross disbursement. We could not do it so far because the OECD has not yet published the rules on how to do it. The grant equivalent methodology is not fully finalized at the OECD, but that will come. As I said, we want to link the Explorer with the member states' transparency platforms that exist. And we want to continue improving user experience. We're toying with the idea of a chatbot, is it called? Something that would make the Explorer obey to your voice if you just ask what you want to see, which for dummies like me would really ease the use even further. But we see next year whether we can have that third phase of improvement. Back to Jérôme for a more detailed presentation of the Explorer and the live demonstration.
Thank you, Laurent. Now I'm going to try to I'm going to try to move to the EU-Ed Explorer itself. Normally, do you see something called the EU-Ed Explorer on the screen? Yes, very good. Very good. This is the front page which you see when you Google EU-Ed Explorer. You get that. So I'm going to try to do a live presentation. The EU-Ed Explorer is a compromise between user comfort and power and potentiality of use. And of course, it very much depends where you put the cursor. We've tried to reach a compromise, as explained by Laurent. But this compromise, having said that, remains a huge database that gets transmitted to you by internet. There are a number of technical bottlenecks that might actually slow down the experience. So I ask for your forgiveness and even your compassion, because it's the idea is that we've made efforts to actually, particularly when allocating further extra servers, to make the EU-Ed Explorer as fast as possible in terms of time of response, but sometimes it can be a little slow. Now, the EU-Ed Explorer has an overview section. The overview section is composed of tables that are not live and that are sort of broad synthetic tables. Now you can see when I was talking about slowness of response, you can see an example. So you do have a number of synthetic tables on main donors and ODA in the world. Using OECD 2018 data, we should have the 2019, depending, probably early next year or at the end of December, at the very earliest. So the overview table is really the one that's for any user who wants no more than a few slides on generalities, on sort of high-level numbers and presentation. And as you could see in here, when you see the click incorrect request, is that basically the server was unable to present to me the rest of the slides, which is never very good news. Anyway, the most important part of the EU-Ed Explorer is the Explore pages, which really you enter the substance of the subject. So the first page, the first page you get when you click on Explore is the OECD or EC plus OECD dataset based on recipients. So I would like you to note the following. You would have here a little band where your analytical choice will be stored and shown, and which is also clickable. Then on the center, you would have the main features, the various tables. I'll come back to it. And on the left, you've got a column where you can actually program your choices as well. You can make your analytical choices. So let me explain quickly what you get on the main page. First of all, you got a list of recipients, and I'm clicking on top recipients, which is in a way a list of recipients that is stripped of everything that is not allocated. So that would be your bilateral list. Now, that would give you the top 10 recipients, but the top 10 recipients of what? The top 10 recipients of ODA over the last 13 years, since 2007, for 30 donors in total, for a total of 811 billion euros. So that would be the total of your EU EdExplorer database on the OECD side. A vast number of projects by 30 donors for 800 billion. So from we'll start going into analytics soon. Now you do have the top 10 beneficiaries. You have the timeline. So let me dwell a little bit on the timeline. Why is it? So you can see that basically ODA by the EU is going up and then plateauing, which is something you probably all know. Now, why is it collapsing in 2019? Well, that's pretty clear because the OECD data for EU member states are not there yet. All we have for 2019 is the EU internal data, basically Commission and European Investment Bank. Which is of course, and of course for 2020 we've got nothing because we don't have live data here. Then you do have a table of a list of donors, and as you can see, you have quite a large number of donors. It goes down all to the we now cover the whole Europe, more or less the whole European Union. Sorry. And then you do have a table on SDGs, targeted SDGs. Now, this is very incomplete, so I would say that it's very much a placeholder for, I would say, for pleasure to come, because right now the only donor report, the only data available are for 2019 EU institutions. We don't have anything else for the member states, but I expect that OECD 2019 data will include SDGs for EU member states, and I very much look forward to a complete table of targeted SDGs by EU member states early next year, because that's going to be about the first time where we get a complete overview of targeted SDGs by the EU, I would say collectively. Not only the institutions. Now that we have the overall, let's go a little bit more into analytics and see what this beast has in its belly. First of all, you can select one given year. So let's select 2018 by merely clicking on 2018 on the table and clicking here on this little accept button, confirm. You now have reduced your choice to 2018. Now, this is very interesting. You get your little selection here in the selection band, and all the figures are now reduced to 2018, the top recipients and top donors, SDGs, etc. Right. You can now obviously also select a specific donor to see what happens. So we can, for example, start here with Netherlands, confirm, and what you do have now is you do have Netherlands. So indeed, Netherlands for 2018, although it shows you the entire timeline here, but the selection is for 2018 with the top recipients. So the top recipients now shown are top recipients for Netherlands in 2018, and of course you see no SDG because none were reported at that time. Now, in order to show you the drill down capability, all you need to do is to click on show project list. And normally, now that's resource consuming, so it will take a little bit of time, but it should show you the project list for the Netherlands in 2018, hopefully. But that's now, there we go. Well, I'm happy. So what you now have is a project list for Netherlands in 2018, and you have values for the commitments and the disbursement in that particular year. To carry on with the drill down, you can click on a given project and see whether there are any project data. Now, I should warn you that we are using the OECD sourcing logic, where there is very little data available in the project data. So if you want to have more data on the project, you rather use the Yati sourcing logic. But just basically clicking on the link will provide you with basic data on the project as per whatever is available in the OECD reporting. So you get, as usual, you get pretty decent financial data, but nothing at all on the project itself. That's typically the OECD statistics. Please note that you still have good data on policy markers, because that's part of the OECD reporting. And the rest of the sections are very much placeholders, because there is no data available. So normally, by clicking on recipients, I go back to my previous table, which is the situation here, right? So that's very much what the OECD dataset can do for you. There is also the possibility to select sectors. So if you do that here, you'll have an overview of sectors by just clicking on sectors and delivery channels here. Now, I would like to emphasize, just to bounce back on what Laurent said, the delivery channel is an OECD dimension that is done at the level of commitment. So the data quality is, I would say, moderate, but if you remain high level, it's, I would say, reasonable. So there is also another way to look at sectors, which is to use the sectors available in the left column. So let me go back to the top of the screen, and I'm now going to remove the choices by just clicking on the little cross here. Voila. So I'm back to square one. So I'm back to my 30 donors and my initial trend line. It takes a little time to adjust. Okay, and I can now, for example, use the left column to select a sector. So, for example, if you go for education in sector category, that's going to be a high-level education selection. But now, having selected that, and you can confirm it's going to work, yes, you have your sector category education confirmed here, and you can see where the education ODA goes and where it comes from, which is quite interesting. You see that the main donor in the education area is Germany, then France. That's quite useful. You can also, by clicking on sectors, look at where the breakdown of the education group of codes. Then here you go down to the level 1 codes, the so-called DAC codes. There are 250 of them. So you can see where the education money goes, primarily to higher education. Now that's quite interesting. That would include the Erasmus Mundus network. And obviously, you can go anywhere you want in terms of analytics. For example, you can go back to your donor and select where, for example, the French money would go on education. So you click on France. Sorry, I need to, yes, voila. So you select France, and then it will show you the education expenditure from France and where it goes. So over the years, and if you go to sectors, you will see that the French ODA on education is heavily directed towards higher education, whereas if you select Germany, enter. So now you got to make sure that you only have one dimension selected. So in order to make sure, I just go up and look at the donor Germany. And then, obviously, you can click on sector and see that it's also quite biased towards higher education. So that's an example of sectoral analysis, which I find always quite interesting. But to go down to the idea is this is a way to. I mean, I've only scratched the surface of the EU Ed Explorer, but I think it's already quite interesting. And remember that you can show or hide the project list as you wish. Now, moving on to, I'm going to move on to Yati to show you what additional potential the Yati sourcing logic has on top of the OECD sourcing logic. Now, just as a warning, I think that it's quite crucial to understand that Yati is a self-reporting system where donors report what they do. So it has a few key advantages. You are supposed to have live data, although I have to say that we don't have, for some obscure reason, the Explorer doesn't show the Yati live data for the EU institutions in 2020. This will be corrected soon. It's one of these. It's a complex visualizator. But just to come back.
Excuse me. It's already reported. It was corrected yesterday, Jérôme.
Well, that's very good news. That means that our IT people are even better than I thought. Perfect. Thank you, Renata. So the good news about Yati is that it's live data every month. The bad news is that it covers only less than 40% of the total financial flows of ODA by EU member states, because for a number of reasons, not every member state reports to Yati, and also inside member states, instead of having a centralized reporting as is done by OECD, every single ministry reports for himself. So not everyone reports to Yati, and therefore the Yati data only represents a fraction of the total. So my recommendation is do not use Yati for financial statistics. It will only provide you with the wrong data. On the other hand, you can use Yati for project data, project location. That because there are more data than in the OECD sourcing logic. Now let's explore a little bit these Yati data. So as you can see in this here, I'm going to cut my earlier dimensions, analytical dimensions, just to have the total of Yati data. Voila. So as you can see, you only have 384 billion euros instead of 800. So it shows you the problem of Yati underrepresentation, and you only have 12 donors reporting. And you can see that the overall curve, the overall timeline grows much more than the normal ODA. So that's the Yati situation. And also, indeed, as you rightly said, Renata, when I prepared this presentation yesterday evening, I didn't have the EU data on Yati. Now they are here. So that's very good news. Now, apart from that, much of the presentation is the same for Yati as with the OECD, and the same warning goes for the SDGs. SDGs is largely a placeholder for something which you will have later, because right now not enough donors report on SDGs, but this will soon change. Now let's have a look at one of the very nice Yati figures, i.e. the project localization. So let's select a donor, la Commission européenne, click, and normally you should have Yati data by the European Commission. Renata, I'm not quite sure that the correction is made, because when I click on European Commission, I only go up to 2019. So maybe our IT people were not that good after all. We'll see. Now, when having done that, we can select, for example, 2019 as a year and wait for it to be adjusted, which is now done. And then click here on project geolocations, and it should provide you with a complete map of the project in the database. So obviously, not everyone reports to geolocations, so this is an incomplete database. I still find it very useful to show exactly where the activity of a given donor is concentrating. You see the concentration of the EU as an institution on Africa is quite visible here, for example, and even parts of Africa. Now, of course, this is you can enlarge. And the interesting bit is that by pointing your mouse on the project, you can actually know what the projects are. So if you click on it, normally you should actually select the project directly. Voila. Now, and obviously, it would normally show if you go to show project list. This is one of the ways to access the project. There is only one project, Désenclavement, with a faute d'orthographe actually, of the Niger Delta. So this is typically one of the things that can be done with the geolocalization. Feel free to explore it. I find it quite interesting, with the full knowledge that that the database is not complete. Now, just to move on, we are now going to try to explore project data. So in order to do that, I'm going to select another donor. Back to the trend line. Let's go to Netherlands again. So you would have Yati. Netherlands is known to report quite a lot to Yati, so that's always good news. And for as far as the recipient country is concerned, we are going to go to the left column and select Senegal. Enter. So normally what you should have is projects from the Netherlands to Senegal, as confirmed by here. Yes. So now you can easily go down to, so again, quoting on moving to project geolocation, you can see that basically you have project in Senegal right here, and you have this one, which is probably a regional project impacting Senegal as well, or it's just data quality. I don't know for sure. In any case, you have now access to the project list corresponding to these definitions, and I'm going to select one project in Senegal, Appui budgétaire environnement, so sectoral budget support. So if I click on the link, I go straight to project data, and obviously I've selected this one because at least there are some data. It's not the case everywhere, so I have to tell you that it's not something at random, but it's one that is known to have some project data. So you have so you do have the classic disbursement statistics, so the project finance, and here you do have almost nothing on project activity, a list of transaction, policy markers that are flagged for that particular project. But here, the interesting bit is that on documents, if you go all the way here, you've got a link that is operational. It's only the case for a relative minority of projects. But if you, in this particular case, if you click on the link, you will see that it takes you straight to the database of the Netherlands with more data on the project. So in a way, this is an example of what we would like the EU Ed Explorer to achieve for virtually everyone, is that having the sheer financial power of OECD statistics on one hand, and to be a very good and excellent project visualizator at project data level. Unfortunately, it's not the case for all the projects. But if you are interested in specific projects, you may very well have data. I think that I've covered basically most of what I wanted to cover in this presentation. It's almost 12 noon. So I would say that right now, I would like to open the floor for questions and comments, if any.
Yes, there were some comments in the meantime, and some questions in the meantime in the chat.
Let's have a look.
I think Laurent has just answered to one of the questions. We have Charlotte who was saying, is there an issue with double counting with EC plus OECD data or EC plus IATI data?
I will take this one. So on double counting, the EU Ed Explorer has been designed specifically to eliminate double counting. How do we do that? We remove the contributions by member states to the EU, both the EU budget and the European Development Fund. and we replaced the contributions by member states by the EU figures. As a result, normally you should eliminate all double counting, except with the always possible data quality issue. Now, it's not always 100% similar to the OECD data for a number of reasons. First of all, the OECD data are in dollars and our data are in euros. So there is always an exchange rate, a potential margin of error with exchange rates. Two, don't forget that it gets very technical, but that's where the question leads me. The contributions to the EDF are in cash flow. The EDF is managed on a cash flow basis. So therefore, the contributions by a given member state to the EDF for a given year may not always correspond to what the EDF spends on that very same year. So there may be something in the EDF petty cash at the end of a little bit of an EDF reserve at the end of a year. So that may explain the differences. Anything large is not normal. So the idea is that I can see that there is a question from the Greek colleague on the Greek ODA figures. If you see disbursement at 65 million, so the validated figures is 33. Now, this is, I would say that, yes, the figures have been validated, and my assumption is that you've selected, I mean, I haven't been able to go on your tracks to know exactly what you've done. But the OECD figures, if you look at the DAC 1, DAC 5 OECD reports, you only have bilateral ODA, whereas in order to have the full contributions by member states in terms of ODA, you've got to take the bilateral plus the multilateral. So indeed, the contributions to the EU being part of the multilateral ODA. So I would say that I will have a look at the data just to make sure that there is no mistake. But normally it should be okay. That was for Greece. Let me go. Is there any issue of double counting? Is in principle resolved. The link, yeah, it's already done. Voilà. Any additional questions I haven't dealt with?
There was Jérôme. There was the question from Giuseppe from the EIB, yes. Whether it's possible to search by project.
I'm not sure. Search by project. That's a good point. Normally, no. It's drill down, not drill up. That's and I would say that it's something we may want to consider at a later stage, and we take good note of that. I just would like to point out that the project titles are a complete mess, i.e., that there is no strong taxonomy and compliant regulation on how to encode project titles. So in many cases, you've got ASCII characters that are not recognized, and so therefore it's quite a difficult search by project title. So that's not a feature which was developed in priority right now. So in a way, the drill down was very much favored as compared to the drill up. Oh, by the way, I mentioned the Excel, the possibility to download an Excel. It's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is to click on the little yellow button here, and that will resources is introuvable. In any case, normally it should work, but that's the way to download the data on Excel if needed. Project results. You can see that in project names you have it's sometimes barely understandable, and there is also the question of languages. Many member states encode in their own language. So that, I mean, that makes it quite complicated implement. Any other question? Any additional question? Mm-hmm.
There is another question from Dimitrios. Could we sum up some of the multilateral aid in order to reach the figure recorded at the disbursement tab? I only summed the bilateral aid. Thank you in advance.
Well, again, I think that it's you know, at that level of complexity of the questions, I'm not quite sure I'm able to do it live. So if I understand well, the example was Greece 2018, and again, I'll be very happy to. So let's see. No, I don't like the. Okay, the Explorer is working, but let's see what we can do right now. We still have a little bit of time if everyone agrees. So what we need to do is to select Greece as a donor. There we go. So you now have Greece as an OECD data set for year 2018. You have the 65 million euros, sorry. And if I understand well, what you are saying is that this is higher than what you get on OECD. So again, I would like to check the OECD data on that before I'm able to answer fully that particular question. All I can tell you though is that these 65 million euros, you can get the total gross disbursement in the project list. I would say the figure clearly doesn't come from nowhere. And I would like to invite you to check to check in detail where the projects come from, because where the total comes from. So in a way, again, in order to fully answer that question, I think that I would like to go to the OECD dataset, which takes a lot of time to see whether there is any double counting. But a priori, I think there is no double counting. There may be though undercounting from on the OECD side, but again, this is I can't go much further. We'll have to look at it in more detail. Any other question?
Yes, we have two more. Yeah. One from Monta. Would it be possible to see total assistance to a country where EC funding is from budget, EDF, and a trust fund, for instance, South Sudan? Thanks.
Okay, so in this particular case, we do not differentiate EU budget from the EDF, particularly because the EU reports everything to the OECD as coming from the EU pocket. So in principle, that would not be something which we would clearly differentiate. I mean, there is always a way to do it in OECD statistics, though, because there is a flag that is different for the EDF, but we did not take that into consideration in the EU Explorer because that was not really a priority. On the other hand, your question leads me to considerations on the trust funds. Now, the trust funds, as you know, are financial instruments in their own right, and for a number of technical reasons, it was impossible to consolidate the EU trust funds with the rest of the EU ODA. So what we have included in the EC plus OECD dataset on the sourcing logic is the contributions by the EU to the trust funds. But we were unable to go any further. So in order to the trust funds are mostly regional. So you would say contributions to the Africa trust funds, contributions to Madad or to Beku. What we've done to compensate that is to create a third sourcing logic called EU Trust Funds, which will give you the data on what comes out of the trust funds. Whereas what you have in the EC plus OECD sourcing logic, it goes from the EU to the trust funds. And what you have, if you click on EU Trust Funds, is what gets out of the trust fund at project level. So in a way, if you want, but beware, you cannot add normally the EC plus OECD sourcing logic plus the EU trust fund, because that would be double counting. So that's the idea. But here in this particular case, you have the list of disbursements from the EU trust funds. It seems to be pretty accurate from what I know of the trust funds, and you do have the 4 trust funds available here: Africa, Madad, Beku, and Colombia. And again, it's also at project level. So if you select, for example, Beku and accept, you would have Beku only. So you see that Beku is peaking in 2018, and you have the projects under Beku. Wow. So that's the best we were able to do in order to actually show, to be as transparent as possible with the EU trust funds. Please also note that what is reported to the OECD and IATI is precisely contributions to the trust funds. So, which is why we've added this internal tool on trust funds. Any other question?
Yes, there was another question. Is it foreseen that member states can send data directly to the Explorer if they have the proper database in place?
Well, what I would recommend, and I'm sure that Laurent will agree on that, is that if you have the proper database, send everything to IATI, because we are actually plugged in IATI. We will get your live data from IATI. We will get your database via IATI. That's the way it should be done. And in a way, we are expecting and very much hoping for an increase of the number of reporters to IATI in the forthcoming years. But that's clearly the way to go. Otherwise, we will use the database you send to the OECD. Laurent, I think that you agree with me on that?
Indeed, the Explorer is plugged in the OECD database and the IATI portal. So if you send us the data, we could do nothing with it. It's technically, it wouldn't go into the system. But indeed, if you have more data than what you published in those 2 databases, then do publish it, and that will automatically take it to the Explorer. It actually links to our ongoing efforts to promote IATI reporting with our member states, because that's the way forward.
I have to say one thing is that from the questions that were asked today are questions from specialists, and it's quite interesting because to bounce on what I said earlier, the EU Ed Explorer is a compromise between the comfort of use of a tool made for the grand public, for the general public on one side, and a tool presenting project and financial statistics on the other side. And if I were to follow the thread of the questions asked today, I would tend to tell Laurent, well, let's push the cursor more towards the specialists version and have an EU Ed Explorer that is more powerful, more precise, and maybe a little bit more difficult and complex to use. But obviously, we should not forget the sort of silent majority of users from the general public who are trying to find data on EU material, on EU projects. So yet again, there is a compromise to be found. There is also an additional point which I want to make, is that the Explorer already is compiling 6 million lines of database, and this is a database that's going to increase every year by approximately, I would say not another million, but another 500,000 approximately. So if we add too much data, the database may explode, and the Explorer may not be usable. We are already watching quite closely the response time, because if the response time is too long, people tend to unplug and leave the tool. So in a way, the bigger the database and the more complex the tool, the longer the response time will be. And then ultimately, at some point, it may be better to revert to OECD statistics. Really, if you are into sort of that level of analytics.